this group of Israelis who feel perfectly comfortable taking apart and blocking aid, they have so internalized dehumanization for 75 years of the Palestinians. And what happens when you dehumanize another group is you dehumanize yourself. And that is the part that is our calling as faith leaders and as humans. We need to keep humanizing each other.
Hi, this is Michael Tino, and I'm a minister at the Church of the Larger Fellowship, and this is our podcast. I want to thank you for joining us today. I hope this inspires you. I hope it builds your faith. I hope it gives you perspective and allows you to experience the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message.
Hey, everybody. I'm Aisha Hauser. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm here from rainy Seattle, Washington, land of the Coast Salish people, the unceded land of the Coast Salish people. Michael.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Voices of Unitarian Universalism, also known as The View. I'm Michael Tino, coming to you from Peekskill, New York, in the Hudson Valley of New York, the land of the Kitchewan and Wappinger nations. We see, how are you?
I am well. I am just downriver from Michael at the heart of the Susquehanna River Valley here in Northumberland, Pennsylvania. And we are on the historic land of the Susquehannock people. Oh, I am DC Fortune, and my pronouns are he, him. I'm glad to be here. Chris, how are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Rivera, she, her pronouns. I'm coming to you from beautiful Central Virginia.
So I have a topic that I've been thinking about because I'm going to relate it to Unitarian Universalism, I promise. So
please.
A dude I never heard of until he gave this fucking speech, Harrison Butker, the Kansas City Cheifs kicker, gave 28 years old. This is important to the conversation. Whose mother is a physicist. Again, important to the conversation. Gave his commencement speech to Benedictine, a private, I'm guessing conservative Catholic college, where he said, I gotta say it now without laughing because I'm more pissed than this is funny, but it's like funny in a macabre way. Said most women were probably more excited about getting married and having children than getting their degrees. And he also railed against Pride Month, against LGBTQ plus rights movement, Joe Biden's stance on abortion. Wasn't Roe v. Wade overturned? What fucking more do you want? And then the quote is, I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she started living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. First of all, I want to ask Isabel, I want independent confirmation.
I want to talk to Isabel. I think we need free Isabel signs.
I want to know what Isabel thinks. Second, here's where this really, so one of the things when our whole lives is a comprehensive sexuality education program that was started by the United Church of Christ and the Unitarian Universalist Association. One of the things when we do parent orientations is we tell them, if you don't teach your children about sex, everyone else will. They will get messages and they will learn about sexuality. So when I heard this dude's speech and I heard his mother is a physicist, I said, oh, here's my guess. Because one of the things I also tell parents who are considered, I'm still a religious educator. When I was a brick and mortar, I worked at 3 congregations. And when I would, parents would come in and ask questions, I'd say, look, if you don't teach your children about religion, someone else will. And when I asked once a religious educator when I was a baby dairy in like 2003 or 4, and I said, how do you kids rebel? And she said, my son joined Campus Crusaders for Christ. And she said, I was embarrassed. Because here is a religious educator in a faith that is pluralist, that affirms the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And we can't leave it up to chance. I mean, that's how I ended up at UU. I've told the story countless times. My daughter at 5, whose best friend was a Dutch Reformed, a Good Friday, went and I didn't care. I was like, yeah, play with your, of course you can. And then she'd come home and declare Jesus the light of the world to her Jewish father. So obviously, yeah, and that's when I realized, and I'm like, she's really going to become a Christian at any point now by the time she's 8, unless we intervene. And he's not the only one. There are Gen Zs are all over the place in terms of, yes, there's very liberal activists, and then there are the ones who are going super conservative, and maybe there's a void being filled. Don't leave it up to chance. And you don't have to force your kids to do anything. My kids know my values. Neither of them identify as Unitarian Universalist. And we talk values in my family. They grew up in the UU church since they were 5, and Luke was 2, but they know what our values are. So even if they're not Unitarian Universalist, so I just feel for that kid's mother. Anyway, I'm going to be quiet. That's my
Well,
rant.
and I
Like,
think,
what the
I
fuck?
mean, to be fair, our friend, our sibling, whatever you want to call Harrison Butker, he brought it to the men as well, because he really wanted men to also know that part of what plagues the society is the lie that's been told to the men as well, that men are not necessary in home or in our communities. And he goes on to say, as men, we set the tone of the culture. And when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in the absence of men in the home, which plays a large role in the violence we see all around the nation. Other countries do not have nearly the same absentee father rates as we find here in the US, and a correlation can be made to their drastically lower violence rates as well. I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say that a causal link, which is much more important than a corollary link, is to other countries enforcing gun control.
Hello.
And other countries not having ready access to weapons of mass destruction that can be available to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. That, in his words, this is the part that just fight against the cultural emasculation of men, do hard things, be unapologetic in your masculinity. And so I want to just say that idea to me is, if we want to talk about corollary and causal relations to violence, let's talk about it. Let's not throw these words out there as though somehow just saying them is going to make it be so, because it isn't. And this is the danger. It's funny-ish, but the danger is the message that is received is that in my masculinity, I need to be able to create dominance over the women in my life, the home in my life. That all comes, chaos comes from me not asserting that dominance. And that's what we see in the world.
This is why I preach about male fragility and toxic masculinity on Father's Day, and then everybody hates me. Because I'm like, raise better boys, raise the next generation of fathers.
I mean, we had Reverend Sarah Green gave a wonderful sermon this past Sunday as our guest sermonator at the CLF, in talking about the foundational origins of Mother's Day and what it was actually talking about responsibility to other people's children and taking care of other people's children and not raising our children to kill other people's children. And that was our responsibility in what she was talking about in terms of mothers, is that we would care enough for other people's children to not raise our children to kill them. And when you get it away from the hallmark capitalist consumerism and you actually get it down to what we're fundamentally trying to do, yeah, people tend to not thank you for that, DC. And it remains our call and our responsibility.
Well, and in 1870, Julia Ward Howe made it gendered, because it is gendered in our society still, even, but it's a universal call of humanity to teach our children not to dehumanize and devalue other people's children, right? And not to inflict violence upon them, not to support war against them. And if that's feminine, great. Sign me up for femininity, right? Sign me up for femininity if that is feminine. But it should be a universal call of humanity. And if that is in like some stark contrast to this dude's view of like how we should be raising people, then like we need to make that contrast clear.
When you have a guy who's criticizing the Catholic Church birth control plan as being too liberal,
That's right.
wow. Just wow.
DC, I want to disagree a little bit with the framing of Raise Better Boys, because that's not going to fix the problem. We need to take down the patriarchy, right? This is kind of like the misunderstanding of how to dismantle racism. It is not about being a kinder person, right? I had a colleague once say, I don't care how white people feel, just stop getting in the way of Black communities thriving, right? So I don't think it's about raising, I mean, that's honestly the smallest piece of it is raising better boys. The bigger piece of it is thinking about how, because there is no world that I can imagine, and I don't know how, obviously I just learned about this dude in the last 2 days, but his mom, who's a physicist, I'd like to think she didn't do this intentionally, right? So there was, again, if you don't share your values, but I think there's a societal, I don't want to let society off the hook. I don't want the patriarchy to be let off the hook, because I'll tell you, my son, both my children spent 90% of their childhood with me. My ex-husband worked 70, 80-hour weeks because of his job. And there are things that my son will say to me, I will not share because they're private, that I want like my hair to fall out. I'm like, I don't understand. I know exactly how I raised you, because there's still society that comes in and has immense messages, immense, that's not the right word, that are pervasive on our children. And so there's a multi-pronged approach to this. And honestly, it's a collective. There's no such thing as other people's children. I didn't come up with that, but I say it a lot. They're all our children, right? So I just want to say, I think it's a both and. Yes, I mean, I think raising better boys, but I think that's honestly the smallest piece of it. I think there is, what does it take to dismantle patriarchal ideas and values that is intricately tied to white supremacy? It is intricately tied to violent extractive capitalism. And so it's all connected and doesn't happen. In fact, when I Googled that dude's name, the NFL came out denouncing his speech. I mean, it was that. Anyway, that's what I think.
Well, it's part of a coordinated right-wing backlash. Let's just be clear, right? So this is at a college that I wouldn't be surprised if the college comes out against what he said either. One of my colleagues, and I don't remember who it was, posted this morning that they went to that school. It was a liberal Catholic university when they went to it. And
the Benedictines aren't the hardcore ones.
Maybe I was wrong. It's not
the ones known for like jams and wine. And I believe it was, what's his name? The guy who developed the theory of dominant and recessive genes. Mendel, I think, was a Benedictine monk. They're big in agriculture, which led to genetics and music and holy chants and stuff like that. They're not the really scary ones as a rule.
But there is this organized right-wing backlash to everything that is inclusive and expansive and anti-oppressive and anti-patriarchy. And this is part of it, right? This is part of it. When people like say good things about the former president of the United States, it's part of that. It's like buying into this culture that somehow inclusivity has gone too far.
I'm sorry. It's so preposterous. Don't be so inclusive. Like, people aren't stopping to listen to themselves. Like, seriously.
I mean, I think they are, which is even scarier to me. That's right. Don't be so inclusive.
Do we want to talk about the trial that's going on? Can we just celebrate for a moment Stormy Daniels? Can we celebrate that woman for absolutely shredding the defense attorney that tried to cross-examine her?
I haven't been following. I believe you. I wish there was, a snowball's chance in hell that there would even be any justice happening. Like, if I thought this, I know that it's all real, but it just feels so disheartening that it feels like he's going to be able to run for president in spite of this. It feels so like, what is it that we're living? What is this fucking timeline? And did you notice, somebody brought this up on TikTok, there are no campaign signs. It's May of a presidential election year. I have not seen one campaign sign. Have any of you?
Normally,
Oh, they're all so I'm in rural
Really?
Virginia. I don't want to platform them, so I haven't taken the video that I took of yes, let me just say I can't even
Oh,
get the words
wow.
out fast enough about what this feels like here.
Yep.
And
Same here.
the fact that they are so excited that he is going to be running again, that these past 4 years were stolen from them, and that this is likening to the second coming. Yes. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it is very, very, I mean, they just announced yesterday, right, that they've agreed on the debates.
Right. Well, the funny thing, did you see the video that Joe Biden released challenging him? So Joe Biden released a thing, hey, I'll debate you anytime, anywhere, blah, 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 blah. I understand you're free on Wednesdays. No shit. I understand you're free on Wednesdays. Oh my. Like
Because
that's the
that's
only
when court isn't in session.
That's right. That's when court is not in
missed the
session.
reference.
Yeah, court isn't in session on Wednesdays. Biden is on a definite campaign to be as nasty as Republicans have been in the past in campaigning, and I feel some kind of way about that. And I cannot imagine. I can't imagine. I was just going to say I cannot imagine another 4 years under Trump, and yet thing that just scares me shitless is he does what we said this before. If you go back to the views, when we were doing the views, when Donald Trump was president, we said, why is anybody surprised that he is putting babies in cages? Why is anyone surprised that he is building this wall? Why is anyone surprised at the Muslim ban? This man promised he would do this, and he follows through on his promises.
He told you.
Why is anyone surprised that he appointed justices that overturned Roe v. Wade?
Right.
He promised he would.
And he's very clear. He's coming after birthright citizenship. He's not just coming for immigrants. He's coming for the children of immigrants and anybody birthed from that line to get them the hell out of all of the Black and brown people. Like he's
Barron
very
Trump.
clear what he's going to be doing.
Yeah.
And because of that, people are very clear that they want him to.
Right. Just my own little political hack twitchiness here is it's May of an election year. Normally there are still primaries going on. Normally
there's not even that. I know. No, I'm well aware. I'm saying there's not even primary signs. There's nothing. At least Seattle. I'm saying I'm well aware. I'm saying there would be at least some kind of. I mean, thankfully, I'm sure in rural Eastern Washington there are the same signs you're seeing. I don't even want to say his name, but in Seattle there would at least be primary signs. And I saw. Okay, I'm lying. I saw maybe one for governor. There is a governor's race in Washington State, but here's the thing that I also want to say, because an election strategy of I'm not the other guy is bullshit at this point. And this was fucking Biden's election to lose. He only had to stop this fucking genocide that everybody, I mean, he's being called Butcher Biden. And then Black and brown people are going to get blamed when Biden loses because we're like, how are you looking at Arabs and telling us to vote for you, you fucking asshole? You're okay with decimating an entire fucking people. But we're going to get blamed. It's the Black and brown people who are like, why should you keep your job when you fund actively a genocide? So yes, of course, Trump is a piece of shit and heinous, but so is Biden, and no one's going to tell me different because he is perfectly okay with actively motherfucking funding a genocide. I can't even believe we're 7 fucking months into this and he's still sending bombs. And what did he stop sending? 4 when they went into Rafah, which he said that was the red line. Joe Biden said. So the discourse on the left is beyond it is so disheartening and makes me angry because I already see white liberals being pissed, angry at Black women and Black and brown people and Arab people saying, fuck Joe Biden, fuck him and in his administration. Did you see now the first Jewish staff member resigned and said, what the fuck are you doing about Israel? I mean, there have already been other White House staff members have resigned.
And let's be really clear. Let's be super, super clear to your point. Aisha, because they're already getting the slide decks ready of whose fault it's going to be that Biden loses this. They're working on that. The strategy to elect Trump has nothing to do with the support of Black and brown people. If you will remember, who got him into election in the first place was white women. So I don't need you all to go out there and collect your Black and brown friends. I need you all to go out there and collect your white women friends.
Right.
And their white women friends, and so on and so on. That is the number one strategy for getting Trump elected, is white women. So don't come for me. Don't come for Aisha. You all have been told who to come for.
And let's just be clear, they're scared about that, of what is happening after Roe v. Wade was overturned. And they should be scared about that. They came for the reproductive rights of white women. And that's who they need to be elected. Because let's be clear that even pre-Roe v. Wade overturned, the reproductive rights of Black and brown women were under attack. We can be clear about that too, right? But they came for the reproductive rights of white women.
By design. The overturning of Roe v. Wade, I really believe, was founded in fear of becoming a white minority.
Oh, yeah, that's documented. That's exactly why.
Right. So they want to stop white women from aborting babies. I don't have words.
I want to also bring up, because I saw the reports in the last few days that Israelis have taken apart and blocked humanitarian aid to coming into Gaza. And there are pictures of it. Israeli citizens, right?
Yeah,
this is not IDF soldiers. They stood by and let them do it. How much of your humanity are you giving up that you're going to behave? Like, I was genuinely, it's not even, I was like, as a faith leader, I'm kind of looking at this because I'm working actively to not become what I am railing against, right? Because it would be easy for me to just demonize these people, but I'm looking at them going, so this is the result when you demonize the Israeli population in general, this group of Israelis who feel perfectly comfortable taking apart and blocking aid to a starving a man-made famine is happening in Gaza. They have so internalized dehumanization for 75 years of the Palestinians. And what happens when you dehumanize another group is you dehumanize yourself. And that is the part that is our calling as faith leaders and as humans. We need to keep humanizing each other. And as I'm watching this, I'm like, okay, it's hard. I don't want to dehumanize Israelis who are clearly hell-bent on erasing the Palestinians. And that's like been the dilemma I'm sitting with, because I am so disheartened and angry. Like right now, I'm too mad to even cry. And again, we're paying for this. We're fucking paying for this. We, the taxpayers, the US taxpayers, and Joe Biden won't stop any of it, and could. And somebody said there's a 3 days. If we stopped sending money and weapons, 3 days, this would have been over. And I don't know, I'm working very hard to keep my compassion and understand that people who are in their own terror and fear, and I'm talking about the Israelis, are behaving this way. However, how the fuck does this stop?
I mean, it brings us full circle back to Julia Ward Howe, right? These people have been trained to dehumanize, devalue, and exact violence against other people's children. It is sucking the soul out of humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not just sucking the soul out of them, it's sucking the soul out of everybody who's witnessing. Right, absolutely.
I mean, I guess for me moving forward, I feel like the discourse in this country, since, forever is so always binary. It's been since, honestly, the Revolutionary War. We're a war nation state. All we do is go to war. So I guess I don't want to, this election is actually less about the two octogenarians that are in, and it's not to be ageist, but like, retire, folks. We're not even a kind society that we have our 80-year-olds thinking that they need to die, work till they die. Like, even just conceptually, let's forget who these two are, but it's like, who are we as a society? And then, like, the babies are still in cages. Biden did not fucking take them out. People are still being deported. So, I mean, maybe what nominally happened is some student debt has been forgiven. Roe v. Wade has been overturned. So, I mean, I don't want to turn this into Biden is so fucking great and the hate pumpkin's a demon. Frankly, a case could be made that they both have engaged in some pretty demonic fucking behavior, and maybe we could have fascism light with Biden, or full on fascism. We're not even pretending anymore with the hate pumpkin. But make no mistake, fascism's on the table this November. But so I don't want to engage in this thing where I give a fuck that the hate pumpkin's on trial, because it's a fucking farce. It truly is. How is he still fucking running for president? I have so many things to say. I'm going to take a break. I'm just pissed.
The comments in our chat are just support for everyone for what's being said. We appreciate you all being there, being witness to this conversation, and also doing what you can do in your communities on these big questions. We throw these questions out and we have a conversation about them every week. And one of the things that keeps me doing this is when we hear from you all about how these conversations spark conversations in your lives and in your families and in your communities. Because we're not just here to hear each other talk about this. We want to try and help Unitarian Universalism understand what our faith calls us to do in response to these terrors and atrocities that are going on, this genocide that's going on in our world, the misogyny that's going on out there, the patriarchy that continues to try and tell us that there is only one way when we know that there are so many ways. And that, as Aisha said, it's not a binary. And we get sucked into that so easily.
I think smart folks, and I believe our viewers are smart folks, have to educate ourselves about how we got here too, right? So I love Lucretia. I love that you're giving us like segment titles. Where do we go from here? But in order to know where we go from here, we have to know how we got here. We have to follow the political discourse from Eisenhower warning us against letting the military industrial complex, General President Eisenhower warning us against the military industrial complex, right? So when we wonder why we're spending billions of dollars on bombs that have to be dropped somewhere, because if everyone had all the bombs they needed, no one would need to buy any more. It's because of the money. Follow the cash, right? Follow the Southern strategy of, at that point, the Republican Party, but goodness knows, I'm not absolving the Democratic Party of evil and blame in this conversation, but you know, the strategy of blaming Black and brown people for the ills of the country so that white people would vote as a bloc. It's been an explicit political strategy for 50 years, if not
for longer than that.
It's been explicit for at least that long, right? So part of where we go from here has to take into account how we got here. I think it was in the 2016 election, I saw a debate between Ronald Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush, who were running against each other for the Republican nomination for president in 1980.
Really?
Yes. And they were debating which one of them would most effectively create a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. It was not like, oh, that shouldn't be done. It was which one of them would be most effective at creating that, right? That would be like the left wing of the Democratic Party right now having that debate. It's not even like the center of the Democratic Party that would be debating who can most effectively create a path to citizenship for people without documentation. The window has been shifted, and it's because of money.
Well, I have always held that moral social justice movements have succeeded only when it became financially uncomfortable to perpetuate the old way. Apartheid did not fall until South Africa became, what's that word? Something state. Nobody wanted to do business with them. Pariah state, right? In the US, civil rights happened in part because of financial and political pressure, not because it was right. It was because people boycotted stuff or they threatened to not fund politicians, right? That's what causes, and it's frustrating that we have to use capitalism to achieve moral things, but it seems like the only thing that works in a capitalist society, right? To hold hostage our dollars to force people to do the right thing.
Can I shit on Hillary Clinton for a second? Because a viral clip of hers, she is so astonishingly condescending that I can't quite wrap my mind around who the fuck her publicists are. Because the one this week was something like she's saying young people don't know history. No, Hillary, asshole. They do know, and that is why they're protesting. They're just not buying into white supremacist, fascist warmongering. Henry Kissinger, one of her BFFs, who thankfully is dead. Wow, he's another warmonger who didn't give a fuck about anybody who wasn't him. She's so like, I'm going, seriously, somebody needs to tell her the truth. Like, because she was on Jimmy Fallon or somebody, one of the late nights a few weeks ago, and they said, what do you think about people being upset about their choices this presidential election? She's like, get over it. Fuck you. Yeah, how about that? Oh, what a shocker that you lost with that condescending attitude. Like, like the Democrats have so taken for granted. Listen, I'll give the Republicans this, for as shitty and hateful as they are, they're fucking disciplined. They're like steamrolling everything. And even when they were the minority party, the Democrats kept trying to find middle ground. There's no such thing, and except that the Democrats have abdicated their responsibility for a very long time now. A very long time.
Democrats, progressives, liberals need to fall in love with a candidate. They need to fall in love. Well, Republicans fall in line. They might not like them, but they march.
And so the rhetoric of get over it is equivalent to say, let's just be more like Republicans, right? And so I think we have to resist that.
Well, hang on. Because I think there is value in, as opposed to a wedding, it's more like what vehicle will get me closer to where I need to be, right? One's going to drive me off a cliff and the other one's going to go in a general direction, but veer off in some weird way, right? I don't want to go off the cliff. I can go this way for a little while, and then if I need to, I can like get off and walk, but at least I'm not off a cliff. You know what I mean? So, I mean, for us, I say we, white, progressive, whatever, we would be a lot more effective if we could. And I think this translates to our churches too, right? When the board makes a decision, if it's a 5-3 decision, ideally you want your board to speak with one voice, right? And you know that doesn't happen. There's 3 people who are like, well, I didn't vote for that. So the same thing happens in Democratic politics. So the primaries have indicated this one particular thing. Okay, so this is who our club has put forth. And no, I don't like it. So what am I going to do about it? Am I going to vote third party? Am I going to skip this thing? Or am I going to fall in line and not let perfect be the enemy of not 100% wretched?
DC, hear where you're saying where you're going with it. And I think there's a third option, because I've heard that speak with one voice line a lot. I've served on a lot of boards. I've served on the UUA board. I've served on all sorts of boards.
Yep.
And my understanding of the speak with one voice is not that we don't speak our truth. My understanding of the speak with one voice is, if we collectively decide to go in a direction that I don't necessarily agree with the strategy or the tactic, but still upholds my underlying values, that I support the work in going in that direction.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that I don't say, hey, I had some concerns about this vote or this topic that came up at the board, and I didn't necessarily agree with the direction that the board decided to go in, But my responsibility of being a board member means that I will support the work that the board does in going in that direction. And that's a difference. That's a difference in being able to speak with integrity and not just pretend that whatever the board has decided I'm going to support, because that doesn't feel like integrity to me.
Right.
To
That's
just
my country, right or wrong. Right.
Right.
I get that.
I can say, you know what? I'm not so sure about this thing, but you know what? We've set up this program and my job now is to support it. And I can do that much better if I also feel like I have the ability to say, I wasn't so sure about it, but let's give it a go.
Okay, so my question is it okay then to actively speak out against the decision that the board has made?
Speak out against is different than saying what my thoughts are. When I hear people say about speak out against, means if the board decided to purchase a property and I was like, you know what? I am not sure that that's the decision that we should be making. I actually voted against purchasing that property, but the board voted this. They feel like it's how we're going to reach our mission. We're going to buy that property. I don't go to the mortgage lender and say, you know what? I'm really not sure that we're going to have the finances to support that mortgage. And I just want you to know that I wasn't really on board with this. It means that I work with the board to make sure that our finances are strong enough to support that purchase, while still saying, I thought we should have bought it in a low-income neighborhood. I thought we should have lived into our values by being in an area which gave us more accessibility for people to work at our nonprofit or our church. Those are different things to me. Speaking out against is, to me, actively trying to stall or put barriers on a decision that has been made by a board that I belong to.
And so I'm going to bring this back in our closing minutes to changes happening in Unitarian Universalism, because we are voting on a proposed change that takes us from the democratic process to inclusive democratic processes, right? So we're going to have to start asking ourselves in our institutions, what are inclusive democratic processes? Are the democratic processes we're using inclusive? Taking a vote is a democratic process, but how do you make that inclusive? Right? And to me, it also goes back to what the board reports out, right? Let's take Chris's example of we voted to buy this property, right? The board reports, we have voted to buy this property. We're also excited about it. That's a lie. Even if the report is just, we voted to buy this property, it's not a whole truth, right? We voted to buy this property. There were significant concerns expressed, and here's how we're taking those concerns into account in how we move forward is an inclusive democratic process, right?
Exactly.
So there were significant concerns about our ability to finance this mortgage, and here's what we're doing to make sure that that concern is addressed as we move forward. That becomes an inclusive democratic process, right? So go back to the Democratic primary 4 years ago, and Joe Biden was my 8th choice.
For real.
Voting for president. Did I vote for him in November? Yes, I did. And part of the reason I voted for him in November is he came out of that primary and said, there were some things that got said by my opponents in the Democratic primary that got significant traction that I have to take seriously. Did he follow through on those things? We can have a whole show on how he thought, right? But he actually said that between the end of the primaries and the election, he took on some of Elizabeth Warren's ideas, for example, and said, Elizabeth Warren had some great ideas that were different from mine. I'm going to incorporate those into my policy. So in my view, he earned my vote between the primary and November by including the ideas that did not win the day that were good ones, right? By responding to the concerns that were brought up, things that he proposed. And right now he's digging in his heels because he's not the Sith Lord. He's just Darth Vader, right? He hasn't responded in meaningful ways to the opposition, to the alternatives, to the progressive voices that are calling him to be something better. And just failing to send a couple of 2,000-pound bombs is not enough. It's not enough. Now, might he get, let's be clear, I vote in New York State. So my vote is almost meaningless. So if one of you in a swing state would like to vote for Joe Biden, I will gladly vote for your third party candidate, the third party candidate of your choice in New York, just so that the overall totals match what it would have been. Like, most likely I'm going to vote for him in November because he is demonstrably less evil, even in his evil, which makes me sick, right? I'm going to hold my nose, and it's horrible that we have to make those choices. But, like, I'd be happy to vote for him if he made this an inclusive democratic process. Soapbox, off the soapbox.
Look at that, top of the hour.
We always have the host specials, and we're like, what are we going to talk about? And then before we know it, here we are at the end of our show.
And he's just like, I want to talk about that misogynist fuck from Kansas City. And we're like,
Is it related to Unitarian Universalism?
Thank you all so much for being here with us. There will be Voices of Unitarian Universalism for you all next week. We'll see you then.
Gracias por joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry, be it time, talent, or treasure. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/podcast for more information. If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review so that others can find us. Thanks again for listening.